Hello and welcome. Another edition this week, a little extra special edition of Coach's Corner. Special because we have Coach Serrano back with us this week, and then also one of my favorite coaches at any level within baseball, particularly college baseball, Chris Pollard, head coach, Duke University. And, you know, we're coming off of yesterday's World Series, but this time of year brings to college baseball the Fall World Series, and in your case, it's no different. It begins this weekend, and I'd love to have you talk a little bit, if you could, about what fall baseball is all about at the college level, and what should incoming freshman student athletes kind of prepare themselves when it comes to fall baseball.
Sure. Now, Walter, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you and Dave. And the fall, as I've gotten older, as my 26th year as a head coach, the fall is one of my favorite times of the year because we get to step back and really focus on player development. We get to focus on things like process and routines and guys not only becoming better in their baseball skill set, their physical skill set, but in general, guys learning how to play the game and learning how to be competitors day in and day out. We were talking before the podcast started about being grinders. You know, we want the fall is where guys learn that ability to be a grinder. And so the interaction with our guys is so much fun. Candidly, I enjoy it to a degree because, everybody's in the starting lineup and we're undefeated, and it's a happy time of the year. Guys really enjoy being out there on the field and love that interaction. And so we've had a lot of fun, and we'll culminate it with this Fall World Series this weekend, which is always a highlight for our guys.
Hey, Coach, it's awesome to be on with you. I have so much respect and have watched you build that program to a national prominence. Let's talk more about the fall, being a coach myself. A guy comes in, learns his routines, learns the process and all that, and does well or struggles in the fall. How much, it makes an impact, but in your program, as I could say as a coach too, the scariest time for me is when the kids are away over the break, because you've put all this time, you and your staff have put all this time into it, and now they get away for a month and a half. What are you guys capable of doing within legal boundaries of the NCAA to direct your players as they go away from campus?
Well, you said it's the scariest time of the year, right? Because you've invested all of this hard work, this energy, and guys have put themselves in a great place where really by right now, here we are the first weekend in November, our guys are ready to go out and play a weekend series. They'd be ready to go out and play a spring weekend series if we ask them to. And now as we get closer to Thanksgiving, we'll have to back away from them, and our ability to interact with them on a day in and day out basis becomes more limited. And that's why I think two really important things that we've got to coach throughout the fall have to kick in this time period between Thanksgiving and New Year's and when these guys get back on campus. Number one, hopefully we've coached these guys to an extent to be so committed to their routines and their process that this winter break becomes a natural extension of what they're already doing. And they have a level of trust in their day in and day out that they want to keep going with it. They've seen how being committed on a day in and day out basis can impact their performance. Secondly, we have to use the fall to really coach leadership. And we are always wanting to see leadership emerge throughout the fall, because those guys that have established themselves as leaders, those are the individuals we're going to rely on over the break to hold the rest of the team accountable. We have to take a step away from these guys. There's only so much contact we're allowed to have with them once they get into the exam period and they start to go home over the winter break. So we've got to rely on teammates coaching teammates and teammates holding teammates accountable. And so the development of leadership over the fall is really important for that reason.
Chris, kind of a continuation on that topic. I want to talk about incoming student athletes at Duke University, not necessarily high school freshmen, high school seniors coming into their freshman year at college. It can be any student at any age. When they come into Duke, what are some of the traits and attributes, both on and off the field, that you feel during the recruiting process make for a really great student athlete at Duke University?
So it's such a great question, Walter, and a lot of times it's the hardest thing to evaluate before they get to campus, and that is the ability to handle, and not just handle, but embrace failure is one of the biggest predictors of success at this level. And oftentimes we don't get a chance to see these guys fail a whole lot before they get in our program. That they've played at a high level in high school, and the guys that transfer in, they've experienced a lot of success. They wouldn't be at Duke if they hadn't had a lot of success. But oftentimes these guys really haven't had to struggle a whole lot. And now they get out on the field with a group of guys that are equally as talented to them. They sit in class with some of the best and brightest from around the world. And all of a sudden they're not the best player on the field anymore. They're not the smartest kid in class anymore. And that can be a little bit of a shock to the system. The guys that handle that well are the guys that really buy into the fact that the struggle is good for them, and that the struggle is where the growth happens. And we're always talking with our guys about embracing hard, and we want guys that not only handle hard well, we want guys to go out and actively seek discomfort, to actively seek inconvenience, even when they're outside of a practice setting. I always tell guys, the most important thing you can do away from the field to put yourself in a position of success when you get in the spring is really embrace those things that you don't like doing, and that might be, I tell guys, if you don't like speaking up in front of class, that's then you need it the most. Like if you don't like getting up early, you get up early for no other reason than just because you don't like to get up early. And start to do these things that really get you comfortable being uncomfortable.
Hey, Coach, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. I'm really curious to your answer to this. So you're the head coach at Duke, a very prestigious university academically, athletically, in many sports, including baseball. You get the high-level academic student. You get the high-level athlete. Grinder. I'm going to go back to what Walter said earlier, grinder. A lot of kids nowadays in this generation, when you say a guy's a grinder, it almost makes them feel like they're not a good player, that they have to be something different to be good on the field. How do you work? What do you do on the front end when you're recruiting, or when you get the guys in there, to have that mentality that you're going to be grinders and lunch pail guys?
Well, in the recruiting process, Dave, I always tell our coaching staff, I want you to listen for it. Like, I want you to hear if you hear it in their voice when you talk to them on the phone, when you're sitting there with them and their mom and dad on a visit or a home visit. Like, does this guy clearly articulate that he understands process? Does this guy really demonstrate in his conversation with you that being a great teammate's important to him, that he cares about his teammates and the people around him, and he focuses on them? Can you hear gratitude in this guy's voice? Like, that to me is huge. The gratitude for me is the enemy of self-entitlement. It's the enemy of self-pity. And when you got a guy that's got gratitude, he can keep self-entitlement at bay. And then, how does he talk about hard? Like, how does he talk about the struggle? And so we listen for that. And then once a guy commits to us, it's really important to me that, like, they start to understand before they ever get to campus what the four tenets of our culture are. We talk about being blue collar, and for us, that is process, that is servant leadership, that's gratitude, and that's having a growth mindset, understanding how failure helps you. And so by the time a guy gets here on campus in July for summer school, it's my hope that he's able to articulate our culture. If somebody were to ask him, if a professor were to stop him walking across campus and say, "Hey, what's that blue collar mean when I follow you guys on social media?" That player should be able to say, "Well, that's 4 things for us, and here's what they are." And so we talk about them literally on a weekly basis and on a daily basis, because I've just found over the years, and I've all of these aspects of our culture we've kind of baked in, because we've realized areas where we were deficient, where we were struggling, and so it's really important to me that we're coaching that all the time.
Chris, one of the interesting things that I always, when I'm conversing with families or student athletes at the younger levels, everybody wants to throw out Power 5, P5, all the vernacular now that kind of comes across with college baseball. And the landscape is changing. I mean, we have schools from the West Coast kind of coming east, and east going west and into the Midwest. Let's talk about, as it's currently constituted, I always am interested in the coach's opinion of the ACC. There's no such thing as a weekend kind of break or a breather. I mean, once you hit the grinder in mid-March, you're going all the way into May, week in and week out. I mean, is that something that takes student athletes a certain time parameter to kind of understand that, basically when that clock strikes midnight on February 15th, it's go time at Duke now. There's no such thing as ramping up. You're basically pedal to metal from day one.
Yeah, I think it's the type of atmosphere and environment that really truly separates the guys that love it versus the guys that think they love it, but they just really like it. Right. And because it does wear on you, and there's a certain aspect of physical fatigue that's real, but I think more prominently there's an aspect of mental and emotional fatigue that sets in over the course of the spring, and guys have to be willing to fight through that. And I tell our guys, like, we're going to intentionally try to get you fatigued in the fall and force you to play through that a little bit, whether that's really hitting the weights hard or really hitting the conditioning hard, because you've got to be able to go out there on some days in the fall and feel what it's like to not be at your best and still have to go perform. Because the reality is, once you get into the spring, you're not going to have very many days where you feel great. You're going to be lucky to have days where you feel good. And even on your B and on your C days, you're still going to have to go out there and figure out a way to be successful. And, I think a big part of that, Walter, is you need guys that are willing to kind of fall in love with the boring. Baseball, you better be able to be in love with the boring, and the guys that can do that, I think they have a better mindset to play this game for a long time.
Coach, you've emphasized a few times, and it's really good to hear. You've talked about struggle, embracing struggle, hard. How does that tie into today's world of the transfer portal?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Dave, because there is a balance, and I will say, just answering this question honestly, I stop and think sometimes before having a really hard conversation with a guy in the office. Is he ready for me to coach him this hard? And I actually I made a point early in the year. We had a situation where I had to really call out a player in practice, and I did it in front of his teammates, and it was based on effort. And the next day in our pre-practice meeting, I was intentional about talking about it, and one of the things that I said to our team was, I said, tell me why you think that I called out so-and-so in front of everybody. He's an upperclassman. He's a senior. Why did I choose to call him out in that way? And, I heard a couple of varied responses, and finally I said, you know what? I did it because I knew he was tough enough to handle it. And I knew he was tough enough to take hard coaching and recognize that it came from a place of love and it came from a place of wanting him to be better. And I told our guys, I said, you shouldn't worry if I'm coaching you hard. You should be worried if I don't coach you hard, because it means I don't know if you're tough enough to handle it.
or good enough to.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learn when I'm talking with Dave or Coach Horton, it's almost like in today's world of baseball at all levels, not just college, but everybody seems to think it's a linear path. Everybody seems to think it's just you're on to the next and you're on to the next. When you're talking to younger athletes, whether they be a potential incoming freshman the next year or they're a freshman on your campus, how do you get them to understand, look, there's going to be a time when that failure is going to crush your soul. It's going to demoralize you. It's in that moment that I have to get tough and you have to get tougher, because now it's almost like, it doesn't work out here. I want to take a right or I want to take a left instead of forging forward. How do you do that with the younger athletes? It's almost like you have to continue to recruit them to keep them from disengaging and ultimately leaving. Do you find that to be the case?
100%. And ultimately, whether it's baseball or in life, I think one of the most important qualities that you can have is resilience, right? And the only way to truly get to a place of resilience is by taking on hard things and fighting to get to the other side. And then once you get to the other side of that hard, you become hardened because you've been able to fight through that. And those guys that look for the exit ramp as soon as it starts getting hard, well, they're never really developing that resilience to an extent where it can be an asset for them. And I called a travel ball coach yesterday because I was so excited to tell him about this. I said, man, I have to tell you about one of your players. And he's a guy that struggled with injury in our program. And he really, even going back to his 11th grade year of high school, just hasn't been healthy over a long stretch. And now he's a junior. He's only pitched a third of an inning in his first 2 years in our program because of the timing of when he got Tommy John and came back late in the year last year. But he's really starting to emerge as a guy that's going to be a force to be reckoned with this spring. And it's such a cool story because in the process of going through the injury, he's become a tougher-minded individual and a better competitor because of everything he's had to go through. And he had an outing last week, a really dominant outing. The stuff was really electric. And I told his former travel ball coach, I said, listen, if he's able to do that in the spring, this guy's going to go in the top 5 rounds in the draft. I mean, it was 95, 96. It was a wipeout slider at 85, 86. But I said, that's not why I'm calling you. I said, we had our teams meet on Tuesday, our 2 fall World Series teams. So we had the blue team and the black team, and they met at the end of practice in each dugout. They both went to their opposing dugouts and they met as a group. And when they emerged from those meetings, they had elected captains for their fall World Series teams. And this young man was elected a captain for his fall World Series team. Here's a guy that just due to no fault of his own has been really limited in his impact on the field. But he's developed so much respect from his teammates just because of how he's handled the struggle and how he's fought to get in the position that he's in now. It's a really cool story.
Coach, you talk about culture, and obviously you have it there, but I think you're discounting the development that you and your coaching staff are doing. And talk about that for that recruit that may be listening to this. So what you guys are doing in the development part from the physical side to get your program to where it's at.
No, I appreciate you saying that. But we are so excited about and appreciative of our staff and the job that they have done. 2 things that I think that we do as well as anybody in the country. Number one, Dan Perlmutter, our sports performance coach, he does a great job of building bodies in the weight room. Our guys are really, really physical. And that's something that I hear as we travel around and play other teams. I hear a lot of opposing coaches saying, Chris, your guys are really physical. And it starts with what we do in the weight room and how we train there. I think the other thing for us, Dave, is our staff, Brady Kirkpatrick, our hitting coach, and Eric Tyler, our hitting coach, and Ty Blankmeyer. Those guys have been really, really good at leveraging technology and really understanding how to empower our players to understand, what the tech does to accentuate their strengths. And whether it's, using blast in the cages or whether it's using TrackMan in the bullpen, I think that's been a separator for us, because our guys, and when I say our guys, I mean our players, I think they can really articulate for someone, here's how I utilize my stuff. Here's how I utilize my abilities, because they understand the data and how it impacts their performance.
Now, I just want to kind of expand on one point there, and the word is physicality. I think a lot of families don't have a good understanding of the importance of the strength on student athletes, when to begin, when to take some time off and begin to get into that daily routine. And, I had Tommy Moffitt on here a couple weeks ago, and he said the number one supplement, he goes, I get asked all the time, what's the best supplement for my son? And he said, sleep. He said, he said, listen, I could say everything comes in a package, in a bottle, in a powder. He said, but sleep. He said, the other thing is when your student athlete learns that his body is his ticket, his calling card, it needs to be stretched properly, it needs to be rested and replenished. Can you talk about that dynamic as far as when you begin to talk to potential recruits now, August 1st, of the rising junior year, about the importance of being ready, that when your feet hit campus, the weight room should not be a struggle for you?
100%, Walter. And I love hearing you say that. We've actually gone the last couple of years. We bring in a Duke physician, Dr. Andrew Spector, who is a sleep doctor. We get him in front of our team to talk about the importance of sleep. And that is the number one aspect of recovery. It is one of the most important predictors of injury or injury prevention, depending on how you sleep. And so our guys understanding that, hey, that is the most important supplement. And listen, if and I don't care if they're professional athletes or college athletes or high school athletes, if you're going to train hard and really get after it in the weight room, but your diet is a mess and you're getting 4 hours of sleep a night, you're not going to see gains, but also you're going to put yourself at a real risk of injury. So we always tell guys the three foundational aspects of your performance: sleep number one, hydration number two, and your diet number three. And if you're doing those things at an elite level, you really shouldn't need supplements.
Amen.
Coach, I'm going to go off topic a little bit, just from a coach to a coach. 2018, I believe it was the regional in Nashville at Vanderbilt. Kumar Rocker's on the mound throwing a no-no. And you, in the ninth inning, you call a timeout and call your guy down. Coaching tactic, or were you talking to him about information how to break down Kumar?
No, I'm super grateful. I love Rob Friedman, and I've been so close. If folks don't know, Rob Friedman's pitching ninja, right? Right. He has a great following on social media. I've been so close to weighing in on this so many times over the years, and I said, no, just leave it be. So we were, to set the stage, we were in the top of the eighth, and there were 2 outs, and it was a 1-0 game. So we're 2 runs and 6 outs away from going to Omaha. And of course, Kumar is dealing. I mean, it was as electric of a pitching performance as I've ever experienced in my coaching career. But the reality, the truth, Dave, of that moment is that it was neither. It was not to break Kumar's rhythm, and it was not to talk about what he was doing to get us out with Chris Crabtree, who was the guy I took the time. The reality was, we decided, you know what, let's just go for it right here. We're going to put our closer in the game. And I needed a few more minutes to get him ready in the bullpen. And so I called the timeout just to give him about 6-7 more pitches in the pen to make sure that he was loose. And so for years and years, I've caught grief about trying to break Kumar's rhythm and ruin his no-hitter. And the reality was I was just trying to buy a little bit of time for our guy to get hot in the bullpen.
I don't think you should have caught grief. I thought it was a great coaching moment by you. I didn't know it was to get a guy hot in the bullpen. I just thought it was a great move to break up his rhythm a little bit, because he was in dial pitch that night.
Oh my goodness, what a special performance that was. What people don't realize, he the second batter of the game, he hit our batter, and it was a pitch up and in, and got him around the helmet, and really kind of was wobbly on his feet. And when I would say wobbly, Kumar, like, it bothered him. I knew nobody likes to do that. It was nobody likes to have that happen in the flow of a game. And I said to myself in the dugout, I said, man, we might have him right here. We might, a young guy. He was a freshman. It was a big stage. And all of a sudden I think, you know what, we might, things might speed up on him right here. And man, what an unreal competitor, what a really mentally tough player he is. And that was a special performance. Well, I hated to be on the other side of it, but it's a night I won't ever forget.
Yeah. One of the things the words, I love the story, but when you said we were 6 outs and 2 runs from Omaha, that gave me chills, because I know in your mind, that's all you're working towards. That's all you're thinking about. Like, hey man, we got 6 outs to work with here, and we need 2 runs to go to that special place. If I would have said, 10 years ago, Duke, Omaha, nobody's even giving me a blink. But in today's world, you're that close. You play in a competitive conference, but Duke baseball now is kind of synonymous with those top, tier teams. Everybody talks about who's going to Omaha. Does that make you excited inside, or does it make you more determined than ever to get to that city in the Midwest in June?
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. I really take a lot of pride in what Duke has done, but certainly a tremendous motivator for me. It's bittersweet, because it's neat that we've been really close on 3 separate occasions, but it's also a bitter pill to swallow that we haven't been able to make that last jump. And so we talk a lot for years. I talked about we're knocking on the door. And of late we've said, look, we're going to stop knocking on the door. We're going to knock the door down. And, we need to quit knocking and just knock the dang thing down. And that's a big motivator for everybody around our program.
And Coach, I'm going to say this. I believe you guys are really close. It's, as you know, going back to that incident I brought up, it's sometimes it comes down to luck. I think when you get to that part of the season, it's getting the breaks. And sometimes I believe it's the hard work you put in the fall. And I used to talk about this. You can lose a game in May or April or June in the fall by taking a shortcut. And I think that's the motivation that you continue to instill in your players, that every day counts. And I love the mentality of what your program is about and has been about. And I'd love to see you guys knock that door down and have Duke in Omaha in June.
Well, I tell you, I love that phrase, Dave, because we talk, and our guys hear me say it all the time. They probably get sick of hearing me saying it, but throughout the fall, I always talk about the fact that we have a sense of urgency today, like the season starts tomorrow. Like, how would you carry yourself if you knew the season was starting tomorrow? Well, that's the kind of urgency, and that's the type of focus and attention to detail that I want you to compete with today.
Well, I'm going to say this, Coach. You guys are going into your Fall World Series, and I know that's a competitive thing amongst, and I think this is good for anyone to hear, amongst the black versus the blue, who wants to win. But the bottom line is where your program is at, that's Fall World Series should be their super regional. And that's the mentality they're going through. And the winning team is going to Omaha and the losing team is going home. And that's how you get your program and a program like yours to Omaha, I believe.
I think that's a great way to think about it, Dave.
So, Chris, I want to say thank you, one, for your patience while we were dealing with some stuff, and taking the time to join me during this really busy time in your professional career. And I really appreciate your time. And I want to let the guys know I'm a Red Raider, and for me to wear these colors, I'm going to take a lot of heck. I'm going to catch a lot of wind, because Blue Devils and Red Raiders, they don't miss. But for Chris and Nick and obviously Steve Santucci, I want to say, go Blue Devils this coming spring. That was hard for me to say. But Chris, again, best of luck in the 2023-24 season. And I wish you nothing but success. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Well, it was an honor to be on with you and Dave. And listen, Walter, the blue actually looks really good on you. So you get used to it.
Now, I'm going to catch a lot of heck here at Thanksgiving Day game, which is at Fenway Park this year. And but hey, listen, go Blue Devils! I'm a big fan of Duke and a big fan of Chris Pollard. Thank you so much, Chris.
Guys, have a great
Coach.
week.
Go knock the door down and take your lunch pails with you.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.